Okay, so my name is Dr. Sapphire Boone. I am the owner of Advanced Social Work Solutions. I'm so excited to have everyone here tonight. So far, we have 63 that have joined us tonight. So I'm so excited. Um, I want to tell you a little bit about me. So I actually started this business a little under a year ago, actually. But I've been teaching and training at Morgan State University, which is located in Baltimore, Maryland, for the past 6 years. So I was able to um, get my BSW, MSW, and PhD all from Morgan State University. I actually got my PhD from I got my PhD from Morgan State University and I graduated in May 2019. So I'm a recent doctoral student. So if you have questions about that, you can always email me about that too. I get a lot of questions. And also, I want to also tell you a little bit about my background, just so you can get a good understanding about me as well. So soon as I graduated in 2011 with my master's, I started in a public child welfare position. I was in family preservation. And at this time is when I took my master's level exam. We call it the LMSW. You may call it different things in your state. Um, and I didn't do, the thing that everyone tells you to do, which is to get it as close to graduation as you can. I waited almost a year after I graduated to actually pass. And it really did take a toll on me to study because I'm used to working. So whether you are a new graduate or about to graduate, or if you've been out of um, I've been out of school for a while. It's okay because I work with all types of clients. I actually had one client that was out of school for 15 years. And she never took the exam. This was her first time, studying and taking the exam, and she passed on the first try. So I have a lot of good stories, as you've seen. And so I was able to pass my LMSW, my master's level exam. And then about 2013, I stayed there for about 2 years at DSS, at the local Department of Social Services. And then I transitioned into academia and as an educator. So, as my role as an educator and an administrator, I actually have a grant program that I run, and I am in charge of MSW students. And part of their stipulation with our grant program is that they have to pass the licensure. And we just changed the requirement that they have to pass within the first year. Talk about pressure. That's a lot of pressure. Or they will owe us all the money back. I mean, that's like so much pressure. So I was able to train and started to create curriculum to train MSWs for the licensure prep. And that's really how I've gotten here. I was able to actually have a door closed. And when the door closes, you kind of open your own door. So I said, well, if they don't want me to teach the students, then I'll go somewhere else and I'll teach other people how to pass the licensure. The reason why I'm really, really passionate about this work is because I just hate the way it's set up. Like, I hate the fact that it's okay that we have to pass a test, but it's just the journey that different people have to get there. I think that, it's just so difficult. The test is really difficult and it's a little bit of an unknown. And so sometimes people have a lot of trouble with passing the master's level, the bachelor's level, and the clinical level as well. And so, I really, really want to make sure that your path is as easy as it can be, although it won't be easy, but as easy as it can be. Also, I do have my LCSW, and I do want to make a point and a clarity point that LCSW in Maryland is actually the advanced generalist. You may or may not know even what that means because not a lot of people have it. It's not the clinical license. Because I went into academia really too early. I wasn't able to get my clinical license. Oh, you're testing for that. Yay, yay. Okay. Wow. Yes, let me tell you, that test was a doozy. So let me tell you about my first experience, then I'll tell you about my second experience. And I do see the questions in the chat, and then I will address those questions as well. And then we'll get into the presentation, and then we'll be able to talk more. And you guys can ask questions, drop your comments as much as you want to in the chat. So my LMSW, um, I studied for probably about 3, 4 months. And I really had to get a routine because I worked, right? And so my supervisor was very, very nice to me. And she was able to actually allow me to study at work. I came in like an hour earlier so I could study at work. And then she also gave me days off to study, off the record type of thing. So you really do need some support in this journey. And so I know some people don't have a good supervisor. And so you don't really want them to know that you are taking the test because you're trying to, yeah, because you're trying to leave, right? You're trying to exit. But if you can get the support, and I would say if the agency is there, or if the agency is somewhere you want to be or somewhere you want to grow, ask them what investment do they have in you. And some companies will even pay for you to take the exam. So definitely think about how do you want to approach it, even with your organization or your agency that you're working for. And if you are wanting to stay, then ask them to invest in you, and ask them if they would allow you to be a little more flexible. Let them know you're testing, you're trying to get your license, and that you need a little grace, a little slack for that. So I was very, very fortunate with that. So I studied, and let me tell you, studying after you're out of school mode is really hard. So we're going to talk about study routine tonight. And also, it was just very anxiety provoking, like a lot. So a lot of the tips that we're going to go over are things that I use. Because what I noticed is that I needed to calm my anxiety down every time I studied. Like every time I studied, I started to get anxious because it's so much pressure, right? So what I did was I used scripture. But what you'll see is that we're going to talk about how to use affirmations, and how to use different techniques. It doesn't have to be scripture, it can be whatever you need it to be. But you have to be able to calm your anxiety down and have a plan for your anxiety before you go into the testing center. If you do not have a plan for your anxiety could literally kill all chances of you passing. Even after studying, even after knowing everything, the anxiety may take over. And yeah, yeah, you might have some anxiety while we have class, and that's okay. But I think that as we move forward in the classes, I want you to ease it, right? Because you can't take the anxiety away, but you can ease it, right? So when I got to the testing center, let's fast forward. Well, before I got to the testing center, I rescheduled my exam probably 4 times. And that was okay with me because I was just like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And so I did. I rescheduled a lot of times. And then once I got into the testing center, I had anxiety for probably, I don't know, I wasn't, of course, timing myself, but I definitely skipped the first 60 questions. And the reason I skipped them is because I was like, I don't know the answer. And I was really upset, right? And so I was able to compose myself. I did not answer any questions that I did not know, though. And that's going to be one of the strategies I suggest. I didn't answer any questions that I did not know or did not feel comfortable answering. So once I got to like the 61st question and I calmed down, I think I took a break too. I took a break, calmed down, came back in, and started to actually read the question and realized that I did know the answer, right? And so I know that since 2011, the test has changed tremendously. So, don't get me wrong that back then, all the answers were explore, explore, acknowledge. So once I was able to get my head back, then it was a little bit easier to get back on track. For my second exam, and I passed on the first try for both exams. So for the LCSW, the Advanced Generalist, that test was ridiculous. Okay. It's actually a little harder because there's no material to study. Well, at least it wasn't back then. Hopefully, it's more now. And the main thing was that there was no practice test for the ASWB, the online practice test. I don't know if they have changed that. But I even called the board, it's still no practice test. I even called the board and I said, hey, I don't see a practice test for the advanced journalist. Like, what should I do? And she was like, well, nobody gets that test. Like, nobody has that license. And I was like, so don't let anyone, say anything to you. The path of having the advanced generalist, it just means that you are independent, you are advanced with your licensure, and it just means that you're not clinical, and it's fine. But what I did was I studied for the clinical, but there was no clinical on there. So my advice to all levels, that's why we have all levels in our group tonight, is because I just used the strategy, the like method that we're going to go over tonight and that you may have watched the video. That's all I had to rely on. That's it. It was nothing but macro questions after macro questions. It was like, ah! it was so difficult. So the first test, I had a lot of cushion when I passed. The second test was like a couple points. I passed by a couple points. So it was definitely a little tighter. But what I will say is yes. So for some, your state licensed clinical social worker might be your LCSW. For the, like I said, for Maryland, it's going to be the advanced generalist. So I just say all that to say that I don't have my clinical license, but that's okay. And I'm going to tell you why. The reason why it's okay that I don't have my clinical license, the only thing I can say is that I've never took the test, you know, like a live test. But I have been able to work with clients that were taking the clinical, and my method works for all levels. It's something you can rely on, and it really goes down to the formatting of the test. And that's basically what we're going to do the whole time. We're going to do knowledge plus formatting of the test because we're going to get into why that's so important, but it's really important to know how to answer the question because you can have all the knowledge in the world and still not know how to answer the questions. And that's literally all we're going to do. And so when you do have some failed attempts, the reason I got into this work is because people literally will measure their self-worth as a social worker on this test. And I just had to disrupt that. I'm disrupting it. Like, we're not going to claim that. There are a lot of situations, a lot of factors. And so you won't ever hear me say that I can guarantee you a pass because I literally wish I could go in there with you, but I cannot go in there with you and be on your shoulder and help you pass. So I can't guarantee a pass, but what I can guarantee is that you will learn the most that you have ever learned out of any of your study material. And I can also guarantee that you will have a good idea of how to answer the questions. Sometimes, like I said, other factors take over and it clouds your ability to make decisions. And so that's like the unique and individualized part of this that gets a little frustrating, right? So you'll email me, you'll be like, I don't know what happened. I don't know why I didn't pass. And we'll like try to figure it out. We try to rack our brains together. So I'm definitely here for you throughout this whole entire process until you pass. So don't feel like, well, the class is over. I don't have Dr. Boone anymore. You have me. It's just maybe in a little different way, but I'm still here. Okay, so let's go ahead. I do want to answer some of the questions I saw earlier. I do see about about the transcript. I know that I don't have the transcript capabilities on this account. I do have them on my university account, but I don't have them on this account. Um, but I do, let's see. Oh, but I can just we'll talk afterwards, because there's a couple of websites that we can collaborate with that actually you'll be able to use to be able to do that, and we can talk about how we can get those transcripts to you. Also, the recordings, there's no extra charge, so your fee that you paid for all 8 sessions, it pays for everything, and you have unlimited use of it. So even if a year from now you're like, okay, Dr. Boone, I was playing around but I'm ready now, you'll still have access to all of the information, all the recordings, all the handouts, all the questions. Is there any other questions that you guys have before we start? Oh, congratulations, Christina, for graduating on Saturday. That is so exciting. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Okay, if no one has any more questions at this time, we're going to go ahead and get started. And again, like I said, go ahead and drop your question in, and I will definitely get to it. I don't know why there's a blank slide. Please forgive me for that. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about naming your why. Some of the information you may have seen, because I did provide some videos and handouts and things beforehand. So if you did your pre-work, this is just going to reinforce what you've already heard. You want to name your why. And the reason that I say that is because you want to make sure that you have an overall purpose, because this journey, as you all know, if you have already gone through studying, it's a lot. And so you have to kind of keep the bigger picture. So if you have a picture that you want to post on your notebook or on your laptop, that will keep you focused. It might be your family, it might be a better job, it might be to create wealth and become a millionaire. I don't know. Whatever that, whatever your why is, make sure that you have it as your focus point. It's all about setting intention. And so that's really, really important. Okay, pre-test anxiety. You knew we were going to talk about it. We kind of already did. Let's talk about, what anxiety do you have about the exam? And you guys can drop it in. I just listed some reasons here because it's probably what I've heard the most. But go ahead and tell if you want to share some of your anxieties that you have around the exam. Some people are just afraid of taking the exam. And it's good to know, if you've never tested before, how the testing center is set up, because it can be very, very, very intimidating, because they do treat you like you're going through the airport and you may have a concealed weapon on you and you went to the airport. Like, they really are very, very strict about that. Worrying about not being able to remember the content, you might have a fear of that. I see a lot of fear, yeah, knowing the content and failing. Yes, losing your job, absolutely. Fear of not being able to settle your motor tensions. Like when you get in there, you might not be able to calm yourself down, and you might have some physical kind of symptoms with that. Not understanding the question. Okay. A fear of also not being able to settle some of your somatic tensions like palpitations, shortness of breath, migraines. All of these things can happen. Okay, the overall environment, hearing people click their mouses, that's very good to know upfront that there are people that are not social workers that are taking the test, at least in my testing center. I'm not sure how it is set up with all testing centers, but it was just a general testing center. So I was clicking my mouse, but everyone else, at least two or three people, were literally typing. And I was like, why are they typing essays? This is crazy. And so that may happen. And so you are provided some headphones. So you just want to keep that in mind. And you may just want to practice with some distractions so that you kind of get used to being having a little distractions in there as well. And we can also talk about accommodations. And when we talk about accommodations, you want to make sure that um, you guys are actually the expert with accommodations. So we'll talk about that so you guys can talk about that. You I do not think you can bring your own headphones because they don't want you to, have me in your headphone. I don't think so because they provide you with one. And they also provide you with a notebook, a laminated, not a notebook. It's like a laminated couple of pages so that you can write things down. I didn't find in my testing center, I didn't find it very helpful. So I did want to let you know about that. Yes. Yeah, it's like a dry erase board notepad. Absolutely. And I saw some other questions too. I'm gonna make a note of it and talk about it at the end. One-on-one sessions. Yeah, it wasn't helpful to me. So you had all of these fears. So what I suggest is write about your fears for 5 to 10 minutes. And the reason I want you to write about them is because sometimes it just helps to get it out on paper. And it really helps to see what you're telling yourself. Like I had one of my clients, my recent clients, she is a older client. So she kept telling me that, she has to work so much harder because she's older. And if she was younger, then she would pass the exam no problem. So we worked on you have to reframe that. You cannot go into the test center thinking that, right? You cannot go into the test center thinking, well, if I didn't have a family, I would be able to pass. Or if I didn't have, no, you can't give that type of narrative, because what it will do is it will set in your mind and replay over and over again. Like, I don't know if you find my voice annoying or not, hopefully not, but hopefully my voice will replace whatever you have in there, and it will say you can pass, you can figure it out, you can figure out the answer, it's all in you, you got the information, and so you can take that out. And so a lot of my work that we do on here. And I do talk to people outside, like in emails and stuff. And I literally have to say, you have to, you have to rewire how you talk to yourself. Because failing by 1 or 2 points is devastating, right? So your fear may be that you are going to fail again. Okay. And that is in itself close to, it's not PTSD, but we probably could come up with our own disorder term for it. Post traumatic test disorder. I don't know. Yeah, yeah, you miss it. When you miss it by, I would say, like that 10-point range or less, it could be very, I find it could be very few things. It could be that your anxiety took over. It could also be that you're second guessing. And sometimes when I talk to people, they say, "Well, I didn't change." No, they say, "I didn't change my answer." But if you didn't put the answer that you thought first, then you second guessed, right? Because a lot of times you won't actually put the answer that you really thought. the first time. And that was actually the answer, right? And so affirmations are very helpful, yes, to rewire your brain. For some, and for others, it may take some other work. And I think that it's really important that you're honest with yourself because your anxiety level is very important. Sometimes you may have struggled with anxiety your whole life, and may have never addressed it. And so the test may have aggravated something that was already there. Remember, I'm not a clinician. I'm not giving any diagnosis out, but that um, this could be a trigger for you, like a major trigger, especially if you have a failed attempt. That could be a major trigger. Like you said, I saw someone say, like, I almost died. It feels like that because you're going through a grief and a loss. And so, always be open to if you need some more than just affirmations, right? If you need to really address the anxiety at a higher level. And that's where the accommodations will come in, and things like that as well. What I would suggest with your mask, because I see some people talk about the mask, is that you have to practice with the mask. Also, corona is a real thing. But during the test, if you can find a way, I know they have like those little contraptions that will have it easier to breathe. Also, it's really important. Oh, thank you for sharing. I'm gonna make sure I also any resources that you share, I'll make sure that everyone has it, and I'll put it in the email. Also, make sure that you are not taking this is a preference. It's just my suggestion. If you have trouble breathing in the mask like me, maybe don't take the most effective mask. Maybe take the little flimsy mask, that allows you to breathe a little better. And then also you might want to like take a breath sometimes, and you are able to take breaks. However, the time does not pause when you take a break. So just make sure you are, aware of that. You are allowed, and you want to check with your testing center, but I think you're still allowed a bottle of water, which is something that is new. They didn't used to do that. So you get a bottle of water, but you have to keep it in your locker so that you can go and get a drink of water, because sometimes the mask will give you like dry mouth. It may give you, I know it dries my lips out, it does a lot of things. So make sure that when you take that full practice exam, and I suggest the ASWB online practice exam, then you want to take it full out and wear your mask the entire time. Okay. Takes 10 minutes to go get a drink of water. I do agree with that, Brittany, that when you do take a break, sometimes it takes a long time because you have to wait for the proctor to come and get you. Then you go out. Then when you come back, it's just like the hustle and the bustle and the shuffle does take some time. So you just want to be aware and don't end up being out for 20 minutes, right? Because then you'll really be freaking out. Okay, I just got approved to test alone in a room. I suffer from anxiety bad. This is my third time testing. PCP wrote a letter of my diagnosis. Yes. And they approved me to test alone in a room. Yes. Use your resources. So I am not sure of the process completely, just from what you guys tell me. Um, but I do know that there's a process. And if you guys want to share the process just with everyone, because I think that sometimes we think about accommodations at the last minute or like later in the game when there's nothing wrong with accommodations, right? Sometimes we think we're social workers and we're super social workers and we can do it all. But for this test, whatever you can do, whatever advantages that you can get, you want to get everything that you are entitled to get. And I have heard there are stories where getting the accommodation is difficult, right? Where they deny you and you're just going to use your social work skills and you're just going to appeal it, right? Until you get the accommodation. that you need. Um, and also for, I know we do, I have worked with, and I shared this too. I have worked with one client who is hearing impaired, and she had the written test, but because it was not in her primary language of American Sign Language, what happened was she was able to pass because she had an interpreter present. So just make sure that whatever accommodation you need, that you are advocating for yourself. And for her, it made a world of difference. And so you just want to keep that in mind as well. Okay, symptoms: difficulty concentrating. You have those somatic symptoms we talked about before. You have intrusive thoughts. Those are the thoughts I'm talking about. Those are the thoughts you have to attack. And some people are a little more nonchalant, may not have as much anxiety, and some people have extreme anxiety. So you should have taken your anxiety scale to see where you fit. And what I would say is that depending on your results or depending on your personality is my suggestion. So you may just need to, before you get in the test, listen to, punk rock, or listen to the, baddest hip hop song, or that trap song that you love before you get in there, and then you'll be fine. Right? And then some people, it needs to be a daily routine, like every day. Like, stop playing with it. You have to get control of your anxiety. I think a lot of it is avoidance. You see that? Avoiding studying altogether. That's probably the number one symptom. But the great thing is that you're here tonight and you signed up for the 8 classes. And we're all going to keep each other accountable because we all are trying to get to the end. But you know what? It's not about being late because you're on time. So don't worry. Don't even, you see, we got to reframe. Okay. We got to use our social work skills. Yes. I'm so glad that you guys signed up. Um, yeah, I would definitely see. I've heard of both. I've heard of therapists providing a letter, and I've heard of the PCP providing a letter. And if you need me to also, review your application or your wording, it's all about wording. You guys know. And so I did have a client that she had a diagnosis of anxiety, but I think they didn't appeal it, but they questioned it because she had already taken a test and this was her second attempt and she wanted the accommodation. So they asked her, well, why didn't you have the accommodation the first time? Right. So we were able to work together to provide, just a paragraph of a response so that they would grant it to her. And they did end up granting it to her. And then she passed, so sometimes that accommodation really, really helps. Yes. Motivation. Absolutely. We're going to talk about that. And I think naming your why is part of it. But the other part is just being able to come up with a study routine because your motivation is going to come and go. But at least if you have a routine that you can stick to every week, and give yourself some grace too and a little slack when it's needed. We have a question. What are some type of accommodations? Please, put it in the chat. And we're absolutely going to talk about a study routine. I did see someone ask about how often, frequency of study, and we're definitely going to talk about that in the next couple of slides. Okay, so for this slide, of course, it's not comprehensive, but my program is not one that's comprehensive. So one of my clients, she was one of my one of my faves. She told me every time she found a new social work dictionary word, she would tell me, well, I didn't see that in your material. So I'm telling you right now, all up front, that my material is not comprehensive. There will be definitions and words that you may come across that you will not find in my material because my material is the bare bones, because the other material is so overwhelming that my material is to take that 600-page book and put it into, maybe 50 slides, right? What's more than 50 slides? But it's like, to simplify it. And so that's what my material does. It simplifies it. I go over the punch points, right? So when you guys tell me that you saw something on the test, I will adjust my material to reflect it. So what we go over each week is going to be the most revised, most current content that I can find, right? And as you guys tell me, hey, there's more LGBTQ plus questions, there's more community questions. I saw program development. When you guys told me that, I changed my material to add that to it. So that's kind of what I do to keep it current. And that way it can be like a supplement. So you do want to have a main material. So I just want to see, what are you guys using? I know that TDC is very popular. Just want to talk about it for just a little bit because some people in the group may not have study material. And then the other thing I want to remind you too is that that anxiety will cause you to buy probably everything on the slide. Because you're like, well, TDC didn't work for me because I didn't pass. But let me tell you, that might not be true, right? So it might not be that TDC failed you, but it may be that you needed something different. Maybe you're not auditory, maybe you're visual. And so, what I've heard, because I've never seen TDC up close, what I've heard is that TDC has a lot of audio, right? So, if you are visual, then the audio might not be best for you. um Don Apgar is a lot, right? And some people get overwhelmed because they're more of a hands-on learner versus a visual learner. And so you're going to do best with making sure that you are getting, some of that material in a way that's going to fit your learning style. I did see that someone asked about, can you combine, and the answer is absolutely. You can combine, I would say two. Don't go overboard. Two things. And those two things, typically like one may be a book. I actually had two books, one that was simple and one that was complicated, because the complicated one had like was comprehensive basically. So out of all the books on the screen, the leap book, the I Will Succeed book, is very comprehensive. So it will give you a little bit more than Don Apgar. And you will see too that sometimes their guides are for like both masters and clinical together because it's very comprehensive. Don Apgar, I would say, is more of an easier read. It is overwhelming, but it's kind of like a dictionary. So when you're looking up stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, I need this, this word, I don't know what they're talking about, it's typically going to be in the Don Apgar book. And then don't forget about Google. Google is your friend. Wikipedia is pretty accurate when it comes to social work terms because remember, it's pretty general, so it's going to give you the answer that you're looking for. You're not going to need to know a whole lot about anything, really. Okay, comprehension. Yes, we can talk about comprehension. Absolutely. Yes, and the prep app. Absolutely. There's a couple of apps, and you guys can put in some more apps. But I do know that there is the behavioral health app, which is like the former Pocket Prep. And then there's the Don Apgar book also has an app as well. And I did see someone say the second edition, the third edition. So what happened was the same thing I do with my material is the same thing that Dawn Apgar does as well. So a lot of people told her, hey, Dawn, there's a lot of community on here, and your book doesn't go into great detail on community. So, like, you need to get yourself together. And then they also told her, I think, a little bit about diversity. It was a lot of diversity questions on there as well. So she updated it. So should you get the updated version? It is up to you whether you want to get the updated version. I do plan on purchasing it actually myself so that I can see what's some of the things are that she talks about. But it is, I think it would be good. But I mean, you can always, you guys are on the Facebook group. You can always ask and say, like, what is really the difference? Can you guys tell me what point she brings up? You know, um, and I can let you know too when I purchase it as well. If you have a choice, I would say the third, but if you already have the second, it's probably maybe not worth it to buy it again, um, because it probably isn't a lot of information that has changed. It's mostly the same, but she has probably added those sections. Oh, yes. Yes, and with TDC, if you're a veteran, you can get it for free, and if you, have some failed attempts, TDC will extend it for you as well. So that is good too. Yes, a lot of community. A lot of community. So make sure you select the right material according to your learning style. I can't say it as much. Yes, Dr. D, I've heard about her as well. I haven't been able to see all of the material, but I base that slide on what you guys are telling me. And that's, my greatest resource is my experts. So I just put whatever you guys say. And I've seen Dr. D quite a bit as well. That's a good question. Will listening to TDC audio recordings in your sleep reinforce what you learn? Um, if you are an auditory learner, I've had a lot of clients that said that helped. Did it help? I don't know. But I have had a lot of clients, they will listen to videos and yeah, before they go to bed and like keep playing it. So I do think it's something to it. Also, Pam Turner. Yes, I'm a big promoter of Pam Turner, and she is really, really great. Yeah, she has a lot of videos. I think she says she has over 50 videos. So that's really, really good as well. And yes, Philip Luttrell does have some videos as well. And people say they like his acronyms too. Dr. D is the one that was on this right here, Dr. Sophia. Don't know how to say her last name. That's why we call her Dr. D. um, and yes, the flashcard system is not as good. So I did put it on here, but it's just not as good only because it's like the book on flashcards, and that's not really going to help you. Hopefully, eventually, I want to produce my own flashcards that are actually helpful, but right now, I just have my PowerPoints. So you're going to have to put it on flashcards if that's going to help you learn. Okay. Yeah, I've heard different things about everybody, really. Heard different things about everyone, but Dr. Turner, she's really good. Yeah. Okay, visual learners. This is what you need to do. You need to take numerous detailed notes, or you could highlight in your book and write notes in your book. I don't know about you guys, but I am highly visual. So all of my classes have a PowerPoint because I could not function without looking at something. And what I did was I took notes and I had note cards. And I did both just because I had to write it down once, and then writing it down on a flashcard helped me too. And I am the type that if you ask me something, I can bring it up in my memory like a photographic memory. So I wasn't doing a whole lot of that during the test. I can tell you that right now. I was not having photographic memory because I was anxious. But it did help me comprehend, the material that I was able to comprehend. You benefit from illustrations, presentations. In human behavior, I have a chart, but mostly we're just going to use my PowerPoints. I try to use colors as well and highlight things. You're going to benefit from lectures as long as you're taking notes. So you want to make sure you take notes, but also you're going to have the recording so you can listen to this multiple times and take your notes and pause it. So if we go over something and you didn't quite catch it, it's okay because you can review it during that week before we move on to the next topic. Note cards, apps, and then Quizlet. I do have a Quizlet link that I will be sending out um, tonight. I can send it out tonight. And this Quizlet was created by one of my former students, actually. She did pass on the first time, and she's like very, very type A. So I haven't even gone through the whole, it's like 150 Quizlet flashcards. So I haven't even gone through the whole thing, but I know it's great because she's just was just really very particular. So you're going to get the advantage of that. She gave me permission to share it because I knew it was amazing. Whatever she did was amazing. And so you'll get that as well. Yes, Cynthia, yes. We will talk about that when we get to human behavior, but yes, sometimes you'll notice that in my handouts, in other materials, the age and stage may be slightly different. Um, but it won't make a difference in terms of the test. It won't be that much of a difference where it's like right on the line and you're not sure because one person said 2 and another person said 2.5. So it won't be that devastating. If you're auditory, we talked about TDC is good. I think social work to social work, is that auditory or is that visual? Is it both? Oh, you're both. Yes, audio visual. Yeah. So the video content will do really good with you because you'll hear it and you'll see it. But let me know about social work to social work. I like to, okay, it's both. I like to know which one is which. So you know. Okay, good. Okay, you acquired knowledge by reading it out loud. So guess what? You need to do a lot of reciting in the shower. You need to recite this stuff out loud all the time. And even if you're visual, or you're kind of both. Also, you can get note cards or post-it notes. Post the things everywhere. Like, you know how we do when we're trying to teach our kids sight words? That's what you need to do with Erickson. Put Erickson everywhere you can get it. Tell your family that you need them to help you and quiz you, right? So you can get this stuff in your mind. There's so much information that you will not need, but you don't know what you need and what you don't need. So that's why you need to, get that stuff in your head as much as you can. Yes, poster boards. Absolutely. That's going to be really good, really key. You also benefit with lecture without written notes. You don't really have to write things down. But like I said, if you're both, then you would want to kind of combine some of these things. You want to acquire material that is for you, that's auditory. You want to watch videos, and sometimes you could even record yourself. But you have me, so you don't need to record yourself. But if that helps you, record yourself, listen to it everywhere, okay? In the car, while you're washing dishes. Um, Anytime you can get study time in, do it. Especially, I know we have a lot of family friendly, head of household, mothers, fathers. We have that in here. So you're going to have to be a little creative, right? But you can do it. You can do it. It may feel a little like you are neglectful, but I'm not saying neglect them. I'm saying give them their time and then reclaim your time too. I had a client, she had a 7-year-old. She's a great mother. She spends all her time with her 7-year-old. And I had to tell her, listen, you give everything to everybody else. You babysit your nieces and nephew for literally days at a time. Okay. You need to call your resources and say, remember when I watched your child? Return the favor. Okay. And you need to use your resources. If you don't have any resources, it may be a little more difficult. But you can still do it. But definitely you want to use your resources and let people know in your family that I am testing. You don't have to let them know when, because I know some people don't like to let people know the date. That's fine. But let them know you need them and you need their help, like all the time. Yes, yes. I would like to talk about that. We're going to talk about that too. A study group outside of this. Of course, I can't facilitate it, but if someone wants to facilitate it, just think about it while we are talking. It's really beneficial, I think, would be really good. Yeah, and sometimes those Alice just said that sometimes the tests don't come out right. So you know who you are. So the test is just a guide. But if you're both, you want to use both styles. And if you're hands on, this means that you really like to act things out or be more active. So you need more breaks. Okay. 4 hours straight is probably a lot. It's very daunting to you. So you need to take breaks. And you also need to rely on what you experience. So for everyone, um, we always try to fit in everything about what am I trying to say? We always try to I don't even know. What was I trying to say? Rely on what they can directly experience or perform. Yes. So sometimes you want to act things out. It may be really helpful for you. This is what I was gonna say. We all know that auntie, the uncle, your children, and you put them with the ages and stages to help you remember. So for hands-on learners, that's going to help you as well. Activities, taking the practice test. Everybody needs to take the online practice test. If you were not able, I mean, if you have taken the online practice test already because you have taken the exam before, I am going to have a practice test at the end of this. And hold me to it because I have to like recreate it. But by March 23rd, I'm going to have a full practice test. Not a full one, maybe just like 80 questions, but you're going to have an additional questions you haven't seen, hopefully before, to help you with the test. Yes, yes, I think I have that in the slide. Yes. Okay. So after you get your material, after you figure out what type of learner you are, you're going to put the material in a way that fits your learning style. Then you're going to start to study. Okay. So, however you study, I want you to do that in topics. So as we go through the 8 topics, which we're probably going to touch, of course, more than 8, but as we go through the 8 sessions, you should be translating the information in a way that helps you. So you need to be studying in between sessions. Okay. We have it every Tuesday. So you need to study in between. You need to do all of those things we just said. Okay. And then once you do that, then you can start reviewing study questions unless you are hands on, and then study questions is how you learn. Okay. But if you're visual, you're auditory, you can take questions, but it's probably not going to help because you don't know anything yet. So you want to know something and then take the questions. My suggestion and preference, however, many there are many things and many times where people take the practice test first and then they just study the practice test, right? We've also seen people that study for 2 weeks and pass. So, you just have to go with what works for you. And sometimes you try to compare and you try to get information from other people, but at the end of the day, it's what works best for you. So that worked best for some people to take the test first and then study off the test, right? And then for others, it didn't work like that, right? And I know that the practice test it's not a predictor of whether you're going to pass or fail, right? Um, because like we said, so many things go wrong, or there's so many factors that happen. And when I say wrong, I don't mean you did anything wrong. I just mean that there are so many other things like anxiety, like life that can come up, right? And so if you don't remember the test, then it might be beneficial to buy it again if you would like, But the best thing to do is to look at the rationale. And sometimes what happens is that you did look at the rationale, but you might not have picked up on your patterns of what you got wrong, right? And so that's probably the most important thing. As we go along, what are you getting wrong and why? A lot of the times my clients get first questions wrong, next questions wrong. No matter how many times I tell them safety first, feelings first, assess first, they know it, they write it down, they get to the question, they second guess themselves, and they get it wrong, right? Literally, I'm like, you know what to do. This is a conversation I had with one of my clients. You know what to do. Why are you picking the answer? Is that what? And what I'll say is, what am I going to say before I even let them know why they got it wrong? I say, what am I going to say? And they say, safety first. Okay, why didn't you answer safety first? I don't know what it is, y'all. It's I don't know if it's it's the second guess, it's everything. So that's why the practice test is the practice test. It's not going to predict. Some say it's easier, some say it's harder. Um, so don't let that get you down. We got to figure out what it is. And it might just be that the questions that you saw on the test were way harder because they were new, they were brand new, and they were totally different. Okay. Because the practice test is it's retired questions. Okay. So you'll notice, well, I notice that it's a theme. Every time they retire questions, they retire them really, it seems like in a set, right? They focused on something. So probably in 5 years, the practice test is going to have nothing but community because that's what's on the test right now, right? So it's like you're trending behind. So whatever the trend was at that time, that's what's on the practice test, right? Because they're all retired. So you're not going to get the same, it's not going to be the same trend on your test. And I think that's sometimes what happens is that you're like, well, I've never seen a question about LGBTQ. So, like, what am I supposed to do with this? I don't know how to answer this. But you do know how to answer it, right? Because you know that that population is a diverse population. How do we handle diverse population? It tells us how to do it in the code of ethics, right? And so that's where we have to get that information. And then some of it is just the best educated guess you can give, and you're going to keep moving and go to the next question, okay? So I want you to take it, my suggestion, you could take it or leave it 2 to 3 weeks before your test date. Take it within the full 4 hours. Don't break it up. Take it all at once. And notice your timing. Notice when you need a break. I need a break every 50 questions. I need a break at question 85. Um, really understand that. I did see someone said they were afraid about the timing. And so we're going to work on that because I'm going to give you 60 seconds. So sometimes that helps you process the questions a little faster. It's like it slows you down at first, but then it helps you process it faster. Slow, fast, kind of. Um, it is important to learn. Is it important to learn the entire code of ethics? No, in terms of memorize, you don't have to memorize the code of ethics, but read it through. Yes, you need to read the whole entire thing because one of my clients says she had a question about misrepresentation, and that was in section 4. So that was not in the normal, section 1 or section 2. So I would say read it all the way through, but pay attention mostly to section 1 because that is everything that has to deal with your clients is the most important, but you may get questions that are those kind of outlier questions. Okay. Step 2, make a plan, set a date, stop playing with your life, just set that date. You can reschedule, but go ahead and set it. We're here, guys. We're already in the class, so it's time. If you haven't already, go ahead and set your date um, and give yourself some time, right, to study. I say, what do I say? Yeah, like 3 to 4 months. I say 3 to 4 months. But if you've taken the exam already, then you're a little shorter. I would say you could probably study maybe just 60 days instead of 3 to 4 months because you studied already. It's just about reviewing and also about the questions now. Now focus on the questions. Don't focus so much on the content, focus more on the questions. When you need to focus more on the content is, let's say you failed by like 20 points, then you know that there may be something more than just anxiety. It might be the knowledge or it might be the questions or a combination. Yes, I know. And sometimes you just need to change it. Here's the frequency I suggest: 1 to 2 times a week at the beginning. Start off slow. Why? Because you want to build a routine. Okay. And you also want to make sure that you're building a routine in a way where you are building a routine when you learn best. So I'm not a night person. Like my bedtime is typically 9 o'clock. So I cannot study at 11, 12 o'clock at night. I can't. Right. So you want to just make sure that you understand that. It has to be beneficial for you. And if you're having trouble with motivation, it might be because you're picking the wrong times of the day. Maybe there are certain days that you need to also accommodate you. You do have 24 hours more than 24 hours to reschedule. If you reschedule within 24 hours, like less than 24 hours, then you forfeit your fee. So you might as well go and take it at that point. Um, but other than that, you can reschedule. I know it is hard. Teresa says she misses going to a coffee shop or a nice place to study. I know it's definitely hard. And that's what I was gonna say too, that sometimes you might need to get out the house. Um, So be creative with that too. Within 2 months, I would say 3 to 5 times a week for at least 3 hours at a time. And you can break that up within the day. And then if you are within 30 days of your test, it's just every day. Eat, sleep, and breathe studying. And I always kind of compare studying with like being online for a fraternity or sorority. It's that muscle memory, it's that reciting it type of thing, like spelling bee type style. That's how you need to be able to talk about this material. It has to be free flowing. All right, step 3, master your mindset. We talked about anxiety already, but I did want to talk about affirmations. We talked about it a little bit. It can work because it has the ability to program your mind to be able to think differently. Your fear of failure could be connected to your childhood, okay? But the root is that you are not enough, okay? I'm telling you, that's why people stop being a social worker because they don't pass the test. And it is so encouraging when you have taken the test multiple times and you're ready to keep taking it. I applaud that. Like I had a client who this was her 11th time taking it, and guess what it was? This whole time, I think I came into her study journey, it was like a year ago, right? So she had taken the test maybe twice while we were working together. And guess what it was? She had ADHD. I'm not saying you have ADHD, but that's what it was. She couldn't focus. So when she got on ADHD medication, passed like that. She passed like that. So it's so many things that could be in a barrier, and it has nothing to do with you. You not being enough is really not the case. Now, if you didn't study enough and you want to admit that you didn't study enough, that has nothing to do with your character, though. So I don't want you to say, well, I'm a bad social worker because I didn't pass the test. No, that's not the case. We have to change the way that we think. Low confidence can ruin it. I'm telling you, the two things that can ruin your study journey is second guessing, anxiety, and also not being able to know how to break down the questions, which we're going to go over. So sometimes when the panic sets in and you start to buy every program that you see, it's actually that you need to break down a question. And that's why you are in the right place, because all of the material that you're studying is the material. I'm going to help you break it down. But the best thing we're going to go over is breaking down a question. I'm telling you, it's going to change your perspective on the test all the way. You're going to be like, oh, so they really don't care about what I think. They don't care about my years of experience. They don't care about how actually it works in the real world. They don't care about any of that. They only care about, did you assess first? That's all they care about. Did you gather the information or not? That's all they care about, right? So we're going to change your perspective. And some of it you may know already, but you just need it reinforced. The test is not an indication that represents you as a social worker. Ever saw a social worker that passed that you know has no skill or little skill? And you be like, how did she pass? One of my clients said that she worked in a clinic and she had a social work degree, but she was the office clerk. And she was like, do you know that the office clerk passed the test? And I was like, it's okay. You have clinical skills. She doesn't have any clinical skill, but you don't need clinical skill. That's why I'm always upfront. I don't have a clinical license, but I don't need one. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. I thought my dog was going to be good tonight, but he said hello. Okay, everybody. He said hello. Somebody said their dogs are too loud. I can definitely relate. So don't fall for the trap of comparison. We talked about this the last group, and I will never forget. Literally, we were all crying because we were talking about how you feel like nothing after you fail and the strength that it takes to actually try it again. And so one of my clients, she emailed me. I almost started crying because I remember the conversation that we had right here on the first session. I think it was actually the last session. We had like a nice little powwow and we talked about it. And it's like we encourage each other. You're not alone. You can do it. You can pass. This has nothing to do with your ability and your career. And she just talked about how she almost gave up. She almost quit social work altogether. And so that's why I'm into it, because don't quit. Don't quit. Don't quit. The test is not all the way fair. And so you quitting is a preference and some people do it. And, I'm not, going against that. But don't quit because of the test. Quit because, you have other things going on or you just don't like social work or something like that. But don't quit because of this test, because it's so frustrating. It's really frustrating. But anyways, okay, when you write about your fears, write some affirmations to combat those fears. We talked about that. Read your affirmation every day or at least before each study session, depending on how anxious you are. Say it out loud. Sometimes it's power in just saying it out loud, and surround yourself with people who believe in you. Remember that grandmother or that auntie that get on your nerves because they talk about you so much in a positive way. And you be like, all right, I know I'm great, but you're embarrassing me. Okay, for this, you need them. Your children, um, tell your children that you need them to tell you you're great like 10 times a day. You need all of it. That person that you call just for encouragement, you know that they're going to encourage you. That's who you need to call frequently. Like tell them you need their support, okay? And it's going to be really important. I have some affirmations. I believe everything works out for the best. A wrong answer, you're going to hear me say this, and you're going to be like, Dr. Boone, I'm tired of hearing this. A wrong answer is an opportunity to learn about areas I need to improve. I can't tell you how much you guys and girls focus on getting wrong answers, and you give me anxiety. You try to give me anxiety because you're like, oh my gosh, we did 10 questions tonight and I got 8 of them wrong. I'm not learning anything. This is not working. I can't do this. You just go into such a panic, right? And so what I say is that if you don't learn anything from that wrong answer, then that's when it's bad. But you have to learn something from that answer. Sorry. I know I can accomplish anything I set my mind to. You have to say it. You have to say it. I can crack the code to the test. We're going to do that together. I know how to process the questions. This is what you need to tell yourself when you're doing questions. Even if you get them wrong. Why did I get it wrong? That's what we're going to focus on. I never give up and I can pass. You got it. You got it. Common mindset errors. You don't face your anxiety, therefore you don't get any help. Okay? Don't be that person. You're not taking advantage of test accommodations. You may feel like, well, I don't need it. I mean, I can get by without it. Take advantage of it. If you can get it, get it. I'm not saying lie. I'm not saying don't lie. But if you're having anxiety, then go ahead and go to your primary care. Go ahead and see if maybe you want to see a therapist or a mental health clinician to really talk about it. Um, because you have to deal with it. If you try to avoid it, it's not going to work. Becoming overwhelmed with statistics slash becoming discouraged when you answer multiple wrong answers. We talked about that. Um, the group is great, right? You guys are in the LMSW, LCSW group. It's great, but you may need to take a break from it because the fail may discourage you, especially when you become closer to the test. You might just not want to see that a whole lot, right? Or seeing people pass may also give you similar feelings, right? And so that might not be doing, that might not help you either. So don't focus on the statistics. This is your unique journey. I don't know what your journey entails. I don't know what it's already entailed. But when you're ready to pass, you are going to pass. Um, and you just have to keep going and keep trying so that you can get there. I promise you, nobody is going to ask you, well, how many times did it take you? Literally, the only people that will ask you is because maybe they're, scared about taking it. And so they may ask you then. But like nobody in the professional world is going to be like, oh, how many times did it take you? And if they do, you could be like, that's none of your business. Like, why are you asking me that? Right? Because all it's going to say is LMSW, LSW, LCSW, whatever your acronyms are, whatever your license is, that's what it's going to say. Just like in school, nobody asked you how many C's you got in your MSW. Has anyone asked you that? No. I tell my students all the time, listen, if the C is the best you can do because you're stressed out, take the 1C. It's okay. It is a pass or fail, and I believe the percentage. I always get the percentage confused because it's a different score for each test. So the score is between a 90 and a 103. I have to double check because I always get the numbers wrong. But it's like a 93. I think it might be a 93. 93 to 103 or 95 to 105, something like that. So if you had a 95 test, you had the hardest test there is in terms of versions. If you needed 103 to pass, then you had an easier test. Right, right. So how it is scored is really important. So that's important to know. But you won't know until afterwards how many you needed to pass. Yeah, 98 to 99. So that one was kind of like in the middle, right? A little harder. I've seen, yeah, 99. I've seen 100. I think I've seen maybe one that was 101. 95. Yeah, that was real hard. You had a hard version. And you don't know which version you're going to get. You also don't know. I don't know how they distribute the versions. They've never shared it on the website. I don't know if they've ever shared their formulation of these versions. I've never seen how many versions there are. And I don't know if the versions vary by test center. So, like if I go to the test center on, Baltimore Street, does it have several different versions, or is it just that one version at the test center? And that's where you get the myths that if you go to Baltimore Street, you're going to fail because everyone that goes there fails. That's where you get the myths, right? So if I go to DC and take the test, maybe I'll pass. Yeah. So you have those different types of um, versions. And basically, what it means is that in order to get 75% right on that test, because of the degree of difficulty, you needed a 99, right? Or 100. Okay. So that's what that means. But you just won't know. And there's also going to be 20 questions that are test questions that they're trying to see if they want to implement it as a question that counts. And so you won't know what questions those are either. And so how I reframe questions that I don't know, that are like off, really off, like I've never heard this term before, what is this? This is crazy. It's unscored. I'm just going to call it unscored and just treat it like that, and hopefully it's not scored. Intellectualization. You may be intellectualizing, and that's one of the things that my recent client had issues with, right? So every time she saw a word that she didn't know, she started to freak out. She went down a rabbit hole of, I mean, it's fine to look up the definition, but she literally went down the rabbit hole um, of trying to figure out what this meant. And really, she focused too much. Yeah, it's okay. She focused too much on that. I mean, it's good to do that. You don't know what terms are going to be on there, so it's good to write it down and just have, like, a running list of terms that you may want to review. But you don't want to focus so much on that, because remember, it's about breaking down the question. It's not really all about definitions. So you don't want to get wrapped up in definitions. And then when you get there, you see something you don't know, and then you literally go off in the rabbit hole just like you normally do, but you're doing it during the test. And then now you're at the bottom of a rabbit hole and you don't know how to get back up, right? So you don't want to get that. Second guessing yourself, not building up your confidence, which leads to changing answers. Again, in your mind sometimes. Sometimes on the screen, but mostly in your mind. And I always say, why don't you pick the one that you thought of first? What did you think first? And it's always normally the right answer. Unless you just didn't understand the question and then you just got the wrong answer just in general. It is scary to do that, but guess what? When you second guess, I'm telling you, it's not good. It's not good. You have to just stick to the black and white of it. And sometimes, most times it's not black and white, right? It's tricky. It's in the gray. But as much as you can, you want to stick to the black and white of it. Those areas that assess first. That's what I'm gonna go with. Even though the other one looks better, I'm gonna go with assess first because that's what I'm supposed to do. Yes, they do have a running clock. Yes. If your mind loves the gray, we're going to try to push it one way or the other. That's what we're going to try to do. Also, a common error, not inviting family and friends to be a part of your process. You can't do it by yourself, so make sure you're inviting them. Yeah, that is what statistics say. Statistics say you're going to change it to the wrong answer anyways. So you might as well go with the first one you got. My goal is to make your first gut answer the right one. And in order for you to have a good gut answer, you need to know something. So that's why we are going to go over content. You are going to study outside of Tuesday, right? You are going to go over those concepts. Um, but we're going to match that with knowing how to break down a question so that when you see it, you can be confident and you could say, I know that this is the answer. And even if it's not the answer, you went with the answer that we think is right. So that was good. Let's see. Prepare early. These are some suggestions. Systematic desensitization. We already talked about using the exam to mimic the real test. Practice relaxation and breathing techniques. Download an app. I didn't say this yet. Download an app that helps you with managing anxiety. That may be one of your strategies. Something every day. Day of the test. Make sure you get good night's sleep. Make sure you eat a nutritious breakfast, not too heavy so that you won't be going to the bathroom. Arrive at the test site early. You may want to drive by the test site before you go. And then select one or two positive affirmations that you will recite during your exam. Also, practice what you want to write on that little notepad, that dry erase notepad or whatever. Practice what you want to write on there. So that when you get in, you can just go ahead and write it down. And don't forget to reach out if you need extra help. Regrouping. There are a lot of people. I saw you guys little bios. I read all of them. I didn't respond to all of them, but I did read all of them. And I wanted to let you know that it's your time to regroup. Sometimes people need some time to process your feelings. So hopefully you have processed your feelings. If you haven't, continue to do that. But sometimes you do need to take a break after you have a failed attempt because it's just very overwhelming. Take a break from studying too and thinking about the test, live your life a little bit. And then once you're able to do that, ask yourself, did I second guess myself? How did my anxiety show up? What will I do differently? And then the other thing I want you to ask yourself is also, was there areas on the test that I was not prepared for? So if you can take a couple seconds, type in the chat what areas were on the test, if you've taken the test before, that you felt like you weren't prepared for. This will help me also when I am doing the content to kind of cater it and be able to talk about it. If you have any specifics, go ahead and put it in the chat because I will save the chat and make sure that I can go back. So when you say community, what are you talking about? When you say human behavior, what can you remember? What do you feel like you weren't able to grasp or that you didn't have information about? So just think about it. Sometimes when we go over the material, it'll jog your memory and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that was on my test and I did not know about it. And I'll make sure that to incorporate that with what we talk about. It is the DSM-5. That is the new DSM that they are the current DSM. Yep. You may not need any new material. We talked about that. You just need a test strategy. So let's talk about the test strategy. Step 4, learn the strategy. Okay. Read the last sentence first. Okay. Why do we read the last sentence first? It's because we want to know, what is the question asking? Are there types of indicators? First, next, best, most, primary. Okay. What type of question is it? Here are my types of questions. And all of these are based in the content outline. Okay. Safety questions need to be answered in a particular way every time. Human behavior also includes a lot of things. Human development and the social interaction is a lot. It involves a lot, and we'll go over exactly what it covers. Um, but a human behavior question is going to explain a behavior. So it typically will say, what is the most likely explanation of this behavior? You know exactly that's a human behavior question. Or if you have a diverse population in your question, it's a human behavior question too. So diversity fits under there as well. Ethics, we want to answer those in a particular way. I love ethics. Diagnosis and medication, direct practice, meaning what stage of practice am I in? We're going to talk about that. Group, I saw someone say working with groups. We're going to talk about group practice, community practice, administration and organization, those like random macro questions that you had that you thought was community, but really had to do with organization, an agency, you're a supervisor. What do you do? Yes, lots of those. I know you had lots of those. And research. We're going to touch on research just a little bit, but typically you're not going to have too many research questions. What is the main issue? We're going to go over that. Even if you don't remember any of these steps, if you can remember what is the main issue, it's a skill that we're going to learn. By the 8th session, you're going to be an expert on, hopefully, identifying the main issue. If you do not identify the main issue, you may be picking up on a secondary issue that is not important to answering the question, and therefore you got the question wrong. The way that the questions are structured is that it's going to have an answer to go with every issue in the question. So there might be an answer about substance use. There might be an answer about financial issues. And then there might just be an assessment answer. And so, of course, it's going to be the assessment answer. But you have to make sure that you're addressing the main issue and not, the fluff of it. You're going to eliminate 2 wrong answers. And then the last step is to identify what I call the distractor. This is the like method. I just didn't put the LIKED on there, but this is the like method. When you eliminate 2 wrong answers, you are going to try to become an expert on eliminating, because what happens is that you eliminate the right answer sometimes because you just don't like it. You say, no, I'm not going to do that. But it's not about what you would or would not do or what you like or do not like about the question. We had to follow Maslow's hierarchy of needs. What is the primary phase of social work? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That's going to be assessment, right? Because we're going to gather what the issue is. And then the Maslow hierarchy of needs is going to tell us which issue to go with first. So I've had some people say, well, I just use the Maslow hierarchy of needs when I answer questions. And it was kind of working, right? Because safety is like one of the first things we need to address, right? Or like their basic needs is something that we need to address first. So that was kind of working for her too. But she needed a little extra. Eliminate 2 wrong answers. So we talked about that. What is the distractor? When you identify the distractor, you may need to read the question over again. You may need to remind yourself of the type of question and remind yourself of the indicator. Sometimes it's the indicator that does everything. It would be another answer, but because it asks you what should you do first, it's this answer. So you just have to pay attention to that. And Best and Most has some issues with it too. So before we open up with you guys to talk about, the K is key concepts. So I put that as what is the main issue, but that's the key concepts. We're about to go over the like method together. Okay, last sentence first. This one is already worked out, but I'm just showing you how I worked it out. The social worker should. Okay, we don't have an indicator, but we know that we're supposed to be doing something, just not sure what. So last sentence first. Okay, then we're going to identify the type of question. In order to do that, we would have to read the question. A social worker is working with prospective adoptive parents and the 12-year-old child in their care pending completion of adoption. The parents describe the child as stupid and an idiot in the child's presence, despite repeated suggestions to discontinue these negative comments. The social worker should. So I'm going to say it's a direct practice question. A lot of questions are direct practice questions. And if you have issues with identifying the type of question, then don't worry about it. Just worry about the key concepts, right? What is the main issue? The key concepts. Sometimes you want to pay attention to this first sentence because sometimes the presenting problem is in the first sentence. For the clinical exam, the presenting problem is everything. For the master's exam, the presenting problem may or may not be a key concept. So you just have to pay attention to the other, you have to kind of read the whole thing and pay attention to this last sentence as well. So this is the main thing right here. The parents describe the child as stupid and an idiot in the presence of the child. What is that called? Okay. Sometimes with the questions, it's about interpreting. You have to literally interpret what they mean and find it in the answer. So they say, describe the child as stupid and an idiot, but the answer has translated that into emotional abuse. Okay. So we might actually look at this as a safety question a little bit too, because we have some emotional abuse happening. So we did the key concepts. Now it's on to eliminate. Refuse to work with the parents unless they follow the recommendations. We're not going to do that. Refer the clients to anger management classes. We're not going to do that. Why? We haven't even talked to them about what's going on. Well, actually, we did talk to them. We repeatedly suggested to discontinue these negative comments. So we have talked to them several times. So now we actually need to take it above talking. So sometimes people ask, well, how do you know when to assess, when to intervene, right? But at this point, we have already tried to intervene and it has not worked. So I actually would say we're not in the engagement phase. I would say because we have a safety issue here, we are trying to figure out what we should do about the safety issue of emotional abuse. So I got rid of A and B. So now I'm down to continue to educate the parents. We love to educate. Let me tell you, it's like the number one answer. Every time you see it, educate. You'd be like, yep, that's it. I'm a social worker and I educate. That's not always the answer. It says continue to educate the parents about bonding with older children. But at this point, we want to bring in the agency. Why? Because they're about to adopt the child and we are concerned. And so the safety issue is that the child is being subjected to this emotional abuse. Calling the child stupid and an idiot is belittling the child, right? So we want to be able to protect the child and address that. Any questions about this question? Okay, I want you to try the process. So I want to see how you guys do with the next question. Do not use refer. In the past, they said do not use refer. So I would say there are times where you have to refer. And so thank you for bringing that up too, because I wanted to say this. Don't go based off of that first word. The first word can be a good hint, but you have to go based off of the entire thing, because sometimes it will say refer, sometimes it will say report, sometimes it will say, so that first word, I don't want to say it doesn't matter, it does matter, but don't get caught up on it every time, right? Because again, we don't want to refer when we are assessing, but because this is a safety question, in order for us to address our safety concerns, then we would refer. And it says possible. It's not that we are diagnosing them that they are emotional abusers. We're saying, hey, I think we need to bring this up with the Child Protection Agency to just assess and make sure that everything is going well here, because I am staying in my lane. You also see how it did not say who I am. It just says a social worker is working with prospective adoptive parents. It doesn't say what I do. And so sometimes you can be like, okay, I must be in some type of clinical social worker, being a therapist or something. Yeah. So I need to refer them back to address that safety condition. I mean, that safety concern. A mandated reporter. Absolutely. Absolutely. This one doesn't have strong words like report. So sometimes it will say report. This time it said refer. But it's basically the same thing at this point, that you have a concern. And so that's who you're going to share your concern with, because that's the agency that's involved with the adoptive parents. And we're going to have a whole session on safety. Oh yes, I did want you to know the colors. And actually, yeah, these are the colors I use. Green is go. So green is the answer. So D was the answer. Yellow is my distractor. My distractor may be different than your distractor, but sometimes we do have to agree on what we eliminated, because maybe you didn't eliminate something that needed to be eliminated. So we'll talk about that. So A and B were my two eliminated options. C was my distractor and D was the answer. And then anytime you see blue, that's going to be my key concepts as well. Okay, let's try this one on your own. I'm going to freeze the chat and I want you to try to use the liked method. I'm going to give you about 45 seconds. Okay, that was about 45 seconds. Um, just to give you a little time to read through it. The social worker should next. And when we do questions together, we're going to have a polling site, so you won't have to worry about entering in your answer to the chat box. Let me open the chat box back up. The chat box is open. You put your answer in. I give you 60 seconds and I give you the polling site so that you can process the question on your own. But tonight we're not going to do that. I also will have the question in black, and then I'll have the question in the colors too, to help you understand how I broke it down. I just am going to break it down verbally tonight, but in the sessions, it'll be broken down visually as well, because you know I'm a visual person. So we have a next question. The social worker should next. Okay, I see all the answers. Tell me what type of question is this? Just a guess. Safety. Hmm. Yeah, I'd agree. It's a little safety. Yeah, it's a little safety. Little safety, little practice. Yeah. A little more practice than safety, but a little safety, little practice. Yeah. Um, what was your key concept? Let me rephrase that. What is the main issue? Because you're going to have multiple key concepts, but what is your main issue? Yes, perfect, perfect. So we get a little background. We know that the client is homicidal and suicidal. That's important because we know that the client doesn't need to leave, but the client wants to leave the facility even though discharge has not been scheduled. So the client plans to leave. So when a client plans to leave that doesn't need to leave, what are we going to do? In general, our answer is going to be different than what we're going to do next. So I picked this question because people pick A as the answer. But actually, when you say next, next is like first. I call it first next. Okay. So actually, what we're going to do is respond to the client, is what we're going to do. So when you see next, sometimes you're in the moment with the client. Like, let's say the client is right in front of you. The client tells the social worker they plan to leave. What is your response? Because right now you didn't give one. So you need to respond to what they said. That's what next typically means. It may mean different things sometimes with different scenarios, but in this scenario, you want to respond to the client because the client is in front of you. Yes, yes. Exactly, exactly. So actually, we're going to get rid of B first. We're going to eliminate B. That's out. Then D and A are kind of up in the air in terms of the order of things because when you have a next question, you want to put them in order. Okay? So I'm not actually a clinical social worker, so I don't know which one will come first. Are we going to inform the staff of the plan and then initiate a involuntary commitment process? I don't know. I would say B is out. I would kind of say A is out too because I did see you guys say that he's already committed and then he hasn't actually left yet. So you would initiate the process when the client actually leaves. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm going to refer to you guys as the experts because I told you I'm not clinical. Never did an involuntary commitment in my life, so I don't know. Okay, good. Okay, yes. Initiate involuntary last. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Like, you're not going to really inform the family members. That's really not relevant. You're not going to do the involuntary commitment because they didn't go anywhere yet. They just, you know, they didn't go anywhere yet. So, between C and D, you're going to put it in order. Once you get it down to the two, you're going to put it in order. Would I discuss with the client or would I inform the staff? And remember, it's next. So you want to respond to the client. You want to tell them, hey, if you try to do this, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to have to, you know, call security or whatever. I did see someone say, well, we would inform the family members if the client was going to hurt them. We do have some homicidal ideation, but it didn't really give us any information about that. So for you to do B like legally, that would mean that you have to do a little more assuming than we have because you have to assume that the family members have consent on file to receive information about the client. You would also have to assume that there's some type of harm that will come to the family members, that you have to report it. And the question wasn't really about that. It was more about, when your client tells you they want to leave, what is your response to them? And remember that this test is very, I talked about it on my Facebook a little bit today. The test is very linear and step oriented. Okay. So you're going to go in steps and you're going to go in order. So that's why it's C. So the answer is C. Discuss with the client the likely consequence of this decision. Any questions? I would think, since he is sitting in front of you, the next best thing would be to discuss with the client. Yes. Yes, because if you have to inform the staff, you're absolutely right. You gave them no response. You just literally got up. It's like if you guys told me something and I just left the room. You're like, wait, where's she going? What happened? What did I say? You have to tell them what, you have to respond to what they say. Always, for the most part, always stay where the client is. For the most part. Sometimes you get questions where it has nothing to do with what the client says. But for the most part, you want to stay where the client is. Duty to warn is only if there's identified person of harm. Yeah. So in order to assume duty to warn, we would need to see a threat. And we would need to know who is the subject of the threat in order to warn them. Yeah. And we're going to have a whole session of safety. I think it's ethics. We go through ethics and safety together. So they're going to, yep, our ethical duty. Okay, let's take 45 seconds to go ahead and do this process as well. And again, I know that normally we're going to have the colors and they do help. But tonight we're going to process it without the colors. But all the rest of the sessions will have colors on there. All right, go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. Okay, I see some good answers. Oh, wait. All right. Okay, we have a first question. Remember, with first, what comes first typically? Name things that normally come first. Safety. We want to keep that in our mind. Feelings. Perfect. Assessment. Yes. And we always want to hit the feelings before we gather information. We always want to check in with our clients to see how they are feeling before we just dive in and try to diagnose them or assess them. Okay. So typically it can be a little order to it. Yep. Introduction. Yep. Engagement. Absolutely. Yep. We want to make sure that we are engaging our clients. And I would say that feelings first is kind of like engagement. All right. So tell me, what is the main issue? We have the presenting problem, we see what's going on, but what is the main issue that you addressed? Okay, you addressed her abortion. Okay. Yes, it's actually both. The onset of depression connected to the abortion. So we kind of want to know, okay, she's coming to me. There's that presenting problem because of depression for the past 8 months. But remember, when we're in the assessment phase, we want to connect really anything to why they are depressed, right? And so we are going to connect that the abortion and the depression happened around the same time. Did you guys see that? The depression happened 8 months ago, and the abortion happened 9 months ago. Okay, so maybe there may be a connection to that. Okay. And actually, the only answer that connects both of those is going to be D. But let's go through the whole process. So, if we are in the assessment, engagement assessment stage, right? We don't want to offer relaxation strategies to address sleep problems. Why is B and really C out? Yes, they are interventions. Perfect. Right now, we're not at the intervention stage. I would say this is a direct practice question. We didn't say that. It's a direct practice question. And we're not at the stage of intervention. Why? Because we're trying to figure out where the depression is coming from. So we're definitely going to be in assessment. So look at that. We already got it down to A and D. A is an assessment. D is also an assessment. But the eating disorder, she does have a loss of appetite. But the eating disorder, we're not going to really look at that first. Yeah, that might, yeah, it's not the main concern. So, do you see how they will take loss of appetite and say, well, let's do an eating disorder assessment? It could come from depression, it could. But remember, those are her symptoms. But in exploring, and I don't like to say that you always need to focus on this second to last sentence, but sometimes it helps, sometimes it's a hindrance. Yes, loss of appetite is going to be not necessarily a distractor. It's just one of those secondary issues because we are going to explore the abortion first. It's kind of like exploring the cause before we get to the symptoms. Does that make sense? Remember when we do a biopsychosocial, we're getting that history. So by asking about the meaning of the abortion, it's getting the history. I also chose this question. So the answer is D as in dog. Like my dog is keeps barking. Ask about the meaning of the abortion to the client. Okay. Now, a lot of people do not like the choice of D because they say, I would never do that. Right? I would never be like, oh, you had an abortion. Well, tell me what that meant to you. Tell me how the abortion, what did the abortion mean to you? Right? So with the test, it's not going to give you the perfect way of handling these situations, right? Because you probably wouldn't actually say that. You're probably not going to say, well, what was the meaning of the abortion to you? But what it's saying is you're going to gather information about the importance or the impact of the abortion. So the wording is never going to be perfect. It's never going to be what you want it to be. But you have to think about what does it represent? We already went through it, right? B and C represented intervention. That's out. Stages of grief. I like that, Melanie. Yeah, because she had a loss and the loss created some depression symptoms. Absolutely. So B and C represented intervention. A and D represented both, they both represent assessment, but we had to see which assessment we would do first. Okay. And because we are already exploring, the depression, we found out some information, we want to further explore the information we found out. Okay. May clients not be consciously aware of the onset of their mental health issues. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So that's why people don't like D, right? Because they're like, it's a little harsh, it's a little direct, I would never do that. So you just have to think about, it's not necessarily what you would do or not do, but again, what does it represent and what is the main issue that you're addressing, right? And we said that the main issue we wanted to address was explaining the depression by connecting it to the history of having an abortion. Yes. Critical things. Yes. I'm telling you, I got so much for you. I can't wait. I cannot wait. It's going to be light bulb, light bulb, light bulb, light bulb, light bulb. Yes. It's making sense, right? It's trying to break it down. I think we have just a couple more and then we're going to open it up like I promised. We're definitely going to open it up. Let's take another 45 seconds and we're going to do this question together. All right, go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. All right, I saw you guys already trying to put that main issue in there. I saw it. What should the social worker do next? So it's first next. We're gonna put it in order. Okay, great. What's the main issue? I saw someone say it, but what did you guys pick out as the main issue? Yep. I saw countertransference. Social worker has anger. Yes. And when a social worker has anger, when you're responding to the work, any reaction, any feeling that you have, okay, is countertransference. It doesn't always have to be that you think your client reminds you of your mother, right? It can also be that you're overwhelmed, you don't like the client, you think the client is disgusting, you're tired of the client lying to you. All of those are feelings that you're having. And so, what should the social worker do next about your anger? Okay. All right, let's see. Are we going to this one was a lot. Okay. The first thing that we're definitely not going to do is disclose the feelings of anger to the group. Because your anger is about their behavior and that's really what you're supposed to be helping them with is their behavior. So really you're getting mad at them for the behavior you're trying to help them with. Now, if your anger was about something that was happening in the group that was group dynamics, right? Maybe it could cause harm to the group, then maybe you would discuss your feelings, but it's really not about you. Typically, countertransference feelings, you're never going to share those with your client because it's something that you need to discuss with your supervisor, right? Yeah. Is next being used in the moment like the last question? No. No. It's really saying what is your next action to address your angry feelings? Yeah. So the last one was like you're in a session with a client, they say something and then what should you do? That's typically how it goes, right? You're in a session with the client, they say something, what should you do next? But in this example, you're in a session with client and you feel something. So what should you do next? So telling your client about it is not going to be that's not going to be good. Okay. Because it's self-serving. It's not about the therapeutic relationship, so you should not share it. In this instance, it's not really about the therapeutic relationship. It's just you mad and you frustrated and you tired of the criminal behaviors. Okay. Um, disclose the feeling. Okay, so we got rid of C. Discuss the consequences of the confront the group. Let me see. Which other one would we get rid of? Confront the group about the boasting. Discuss the consequences of the criminal behavior. Um, I would say that we would definitely get rid of confront. Why get rid of confront? Let's get rid of A because confronting is something that you don't really want to do like first. Remember, next is like first. So typically you're not going to confront someone first. You're going to maybe remind them of a particular concept. So I think you might want to, if you were going to discuss it at all, then you would do B before A. So we're going to get rid of A and C. So now we have B and D left. And again, because it's about me and not the actual clients, that I'm gonna do D. Right. But this is what I want you to see though, that the feelings really shouldn't be addressed. And that's what you have to, the main issue is your feelings. The main issue is not really the consequences of their criminal behavior. So if the question was altogether different and did not mention your feelings of being angry, then maybe B would be a good answer. But because it mentions our feelings of being angry because our clients are clients, then we're going to do D, seek supervision to address the angry feelings. Taking into account the stage of change. Um, if it had mentioned some stages of change and if we were supposed to be advancing their stage of change, then maybe they'll be right. But the main thing I want you to see is that in this question, it is not about the group at all. It's about the social worker. It's about the countertransference. Yeah. So it's not B. That's why it's not B. Yes, Natalie. The question was actually the main issue is the social worker and not the clients. So do you see why we all wanted to pick B? Because that sounds like education. And we love to educate. We educate. Educate. But it's about the social worker's feelings of countertransference. Okay. Now we're going to get another example. It's going to seem like this is going to be the similar thing, but I wanted to show you a stark contrast of a similar situation with a totally different answer. Okay, ready? Like I said, for the last one, if if the question was about the group process and you facilitating the group and you educating the group, then B would be okay. But it wasn't about that. It was about you. So now let's look at this one and see who is this one about. Let's figure it out. Okay, go ahead and put your answers. This one is tricky, but I wanted to show you the tricky ones so we can work through it. Similar to the last one, we're having some feelings, but who is the subject of the question? I know it's kind of hard. Mhm. This one is kind of hard, right? What is the best thing? Best. This is our first best question. Let me tell you about best. Best and most are going to be your arch nemesis, but we're going to work through it as best as we can, okay? Best means that there are several options that are right, but you have to pick the best um, generalist answer that you can find, okay? And when I also say this, when it says that you're going to check in with the client to see what they want to do, it may say ask the client where they would like to start, discuss with the client what's most troubling to them. It's like a textbook answer. If you're going to check in with that client to see what they want to do or how you can assist them, it's the answer. Okay. So it's really hard. Best and most are really hard. Okay, remember the last one was about the social worker's feelings. This one was tricky. It gave us the social worker's feelings, but it did not ask us, what do we do next now that we have these feelings? It said, despite your feelings, overall, what is the best thing for the social worker to do to help the woman? If your question says anything about supporting the client, helping, assisting, you have to do something to further the treatment process. Okay? Yes. So I saw a lot of C's, but the answer is going to be D as in dog. Let's go through why. Let's go through why, okay? Okay. A, provide information to the woman about adopting a child. Okay, maybe that might be helpful. Refer the woman to another social worker for assistance. That is not helpful. We're going to get rid of B. Now, we think that's helpful because we feel uncomfortable, but best gives us a different dynamic, right? It's not asking us in a step process, it's asking us overall when we have feelings that are contrary to our clients' values, right? So we may not think that lesbian couples should have children. But what do we do with those feelings when we have to assist clients, right? We have to be aware of the feelings, but we cannot allow those feelings to put up a barrier to working with the client. Unless it's said that we tried to get rid of these uncomfortable feelings and it didn't work, we tried for months and it didn't work, then we could refer. But we're not at the point to refer yet. We just have some uncomfortable feelings, but it does not say that it is impeding our practice. So the only time that we are going to refer because of our uncomfortable or biased feelings or our countertransference is when it is interfering with practice, and it will say it in the question. So it doesn't say that we can't work with the client. So B is out. All right. Did we get that? Yes. Please don't get discouraged. No discouragement here. You already know what I'm going to say. We only did 4 questions, so you can't get discouraged, okay? It's not enough questions to get discouraged. Refer out. Okay, so seek supervision is a great answer if we had to address our feelings. That's going to always be the answer to address countertransference. But the question didn't ask us what are we going to do to address our feelings, or what are we going to do just in general. It asked, how do we help the woman? So do you see how C is not actually helping the woman directly? It's like indirectly helping her, like in the long run, but it's not helping her. So that's why C is out. So why we need to her again? So, say that again. Why do we need to? Yeah, she came to discuss her options. Absolutely. Perfect. So now we have A and D. Do we provide information to the woman, or do we ask the woman how we can help? Right. So the best thing is going to be to start where the client is. How can I help you? Maybe she doesn't need information. I mean, that's what she came for. But for some reason, you want to, whatever she thinks she needs help with, that's where you're going to start. Oh, yes. Understanding is everything. Yes. Yes. You get stuck. I know you get stuck. And like I said, you're never going to see you're never going to see this question again, but you're going to pay attention to that last sentence, and you're going to make sure that you're answering the question according to the indicators. That's what you're going to do. So I don't want you to take away that when you see adoption in the question that it's going to be ask the woman. I don't want you to do that with these questions. Don't memorize the content of the question. Memorize the principle. Is the question about the client? Is the question about me? Okay, you just want to keep that in mind. Yes, those last those those last 2 sentences can be really crucial. I think do I have one more? Okay, I have one more. And then, but does everybody understand this one before we move on? This one was about us. This one was about the woman. Okay. This one was more practice. This one was more ethics and, ethics supervision. This one was more about just practicing even when you have values or biases. Not when you have biases. When you have biases, how do you practice with biases? It's still actually an ethical question, but it's just a different ethical question. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. Okay, let's go to our last question, and then I'm gonna open the uh the mics up. Open the mics up. All right, go ahead and put your answer in the chat box. Let's see how we did with this one. I literally pulled all these questions. I had a client that is about to test, I think, next week, and she's like sent me all these questions that she was confused about, and I was like, these are perfect for tonight. Let me just use all her confusing questions for tonight so we can go over how to get over confusing questions. This is what we're doing. It's between A and D. Okay, great. The client that brought this question to my attention, her question was, why are we referring them to a group at all? That was her question. But guess what? It's okay. I mean, I don't know, but they're asking what type of group will be most helpful. So we have to figure it out. Most, okay. With most, it's kind of like best. It's kind of like we just have to really look at the question and try to get some clues in the question. The Blue's Clues between the question and the answer. Can we make any direct linkages? Okay. You're confused. Yes, this is confusing. I know. So we have a social worker working with a family whose adolescent son is acting out. Oh, she also had this question. What does the group have to do with the son acting out? Nothing, right? Okay, but we always have a presenting problem, but then we do a history. So during our assessment, during our biopsychosocial history, okay, the mother confides that she was sexually abused as a child by her stepfather. Here's the kicker, and what I will also say about most questions is that last sentence right before the question, like the second to last sentence, I can't highlight it on here, but this one right here is key. Now, normally the key concepts are everywhere, but sometimes when you have a question like this, that is going to be good right here. So, what group is going to help her unaddressed or unaddressed don't sound right, but unaddressed past abuse? And here we see another example of how the answer is interpreting what's in the question. It says past abuse, but then in the question, it says trauma. So you had to kind of connect that abuse and trauma are pretty much the same thing. They go together, right? So if we want to address her trauma, we probably should give her a group that focuses on trauma issues. Okay. So mutual aid group for parents with adolescents. That one was really, really tempting because you might have went back to she's came to us because of her adolescent son. But that's not why we are recommending the group. We are recommending the group because of her past abuse. Okay, that's why we're recommending the group. So that one, I would say the distractor focusing on current relationship. Yeah, I would say compared to the abuser. Yeah, we can make C the distractor. I think all of them was just wrong except for A. They didn't make sense to me. So let's just go through them. B, an extended family therapy group to help the mother confront the abuser. No, because we're trying to focus on the trauma and not to confront the abuser. No, we don't. No. That doesn't even sound right that we want to do that. So let's not do that. C, a mutual aid group, like we said, that had to do with the first sentence, but we needed to focus on the second to last sentence, actually. D, a psychodynamic therapy group. That sounds really good because psychodynamic deals with the past. So that sounded good. But it's focusing on her current relationship. And we want to address the abuse, not necessarily her relationship. So that's why it's going to be A. Let me see what you guys are saying. Shouldn't they offer a family therapy to address the son's acting out? So, Brenda, you're thinking more of what you would do like for real in the real world, right? So you are being a super social worker, you are thinking about if this was your client and what would you do to help your client that, you know, has this acting out son. But really, again, the group doesn't have anything to do with the adolescent son. It's more about working with the mother who confides in us about this particular situation. I know it's like, well, but the client is the family and the issue is the son. But this came up during the family assessment. This is what came up. And so now you are dealing with the issues as they come up, even though it's a kind of like a group situation. You're working with a family, but your mother has this issue and she needs help. So you're going to, it's asking you what to do to help the mother. So that's what the focus should be, not on the son or how to help the son. Yep, the mother is the client. What confused me was the past experience influencing current behavior. So that made me pause when I saw psychodynamic. Yeah, that's why I said I kind of feel like D could be the distractor too. Because it's like trauma versus psychodynamic. So you were good with that, except it focuses on her current relationship. And it didn't even mention that she was in a relationship. So that's why I was confused about that one. So that's why that one was like, started off good but ended bad. So that's why we're not gonna go with that one. If it starts off good and ends bad, you don't want to. We're not gonna do that. No, it's asking about the mother, not the child. Perfect. How do we know to focus on the second to last sentence? Just because it's a most question. It's my suggestion with caution. So I can't always, I can't say every question when it's most focus on that last sentence, that second to last sentence, but it's just a tidbit hint that it may work. But you're still going to read the whole thing and you're still going to consider the whole thing. But you may say to yourself, let me check out that sentence right there because with most, sometimes it's right there. Sometimes. Most helpful to, yep, key concept, yep. Sometimes there are more than one problem in the sentence. I know. That's why it makes it very confusing. So if D said past relationships with the abuser instead of current, would it be right? A psychodynamic therapy group, it would, yeah, past relationship with the, um, I don't know if it's the relationship with the stepfather or just the abuse. But if it said focusing on the like what happened, I think that's what we want to focus on, what happened and her addressing what happened. So that's what we wanted to focus on. Sometimes there's more than one client or person that needs help. I know. But we started off with the family talking about the son, but then we got to the mother. And it clarified for us that we need to focus on the mother in the question. So that's what we had to. Yeah. So that first question was kind of, yeah, distractor. Yes. Yes, I love it. Who is my client? What is my role? What is a presenting problem? What am I being asked to do? I love that. Got to look at Yes, you have to look at what the question is asking. Last sentence. Yes, it's the last sentence is going to tell you. I don't know if you're talking about the question sentence or the second to last sentence, but the question is always going to tell you what you need to do. Unless it's just like the social worker should, then you're like, well, what? Could be so many things. Oh, current relationship with her as well as her son. It wasn't really clear. I didn't know what that meant. Current relationship. It didn't. Yeah, that one was no. We're not gonna do that because that I didn't understand. The answer is D. I mean, I'm sorry. The answer is A. A is an apple. Yes, A is an apple. Trauma. I'm telling you, you had to connect the trauma and the past abuse. You had to interpret that meant the same thing. Yes, and the current that's what I was thinking too. The current relationship has nothing to do with the past. So why are we talking about the current? We need to talk about the past. Perfect. The abuse is the bigger problem. Sometimes the relationship isn't always bad. Yeah, because we don't even know what relationship. I mean, it didn't say she was in a relationship. I was like, where the relationship at? I was looking for it. I didn't see it. So that's why we're not gonna pick that one because it's I'm like, where is it? Okay, so we actually went all the way till 9:30, but let's open it